What's up, citizens of the MBA Wire? Welcome back. Today I'm very excited and very happy because I have a fellow podcaster for our interview. It's kind of crazy. We have Adam Miller, right? He just got into UVA Darden. You're going to start there soon. I'm going to let him introduce himself. But the most exciting thing for me here is that he also started an MBA podcast, which, first of all, if you're listening, definitely go ahead and follow him because, the more information you get about this journey, the better it is for you. Trust me on that. That's something that I've noticed. The more we have people around us helping us, it makes it a lot less excruciating, right? So, but before I get into any more detail, I want Adam to introduce himself to our listeners. Go ahead and tell us about yourself. Tell us about your amazing podcast, and let's get into this.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me on the show, Mateo. I really appreciate it. I'm super excited to be here and talking to some of your listeners. So I started a podcast called The MBA Candidate, and it's now on iTunes. I just launched it 2 months ago. I started Darden actually next Monday, but a little bit more about me. I'm from Milwaukee originally, so Wisconsin, the middle of the United States. Mm-hmm. It's very cold there. And I went to college at a small liberal arts college in Minnesota, so right next to Wisconsin. Okay. Studied economics there, mostly behavioral economics. And when I graduated, I went and worked at a big insurance company. My first job there was actually to help our financial customers give away their money, which is very different than a lot of other big insurance companies or investment companies. Okay. And a year in, my job was eliminated. So our department went through a downsizing, and I had to find a new role. So I did a ton of networking and met with over 100 people internally at our company. From there, ended up in our internal strategy group where everyone had their MBA except for me. Okay. And after that, got a little bit tired of doing Excel and PowerPoint all of the time and helped start our diversity and inclusion group a year after that, and have worked in that HR group for the past couple of years, where I was focused on how do I help other people who are new or young or diverse of any kind, whether it's underrepresented minorities or females, just want to come work at our company and be really excited about it and want to stick around. So like I said, I started Darden next week, so I haven't been working there for a couple of months now. I took some time off, but spent a total of 5 years working at that company. Loved it. And when I met some folks who were also headed to other business schools, became inspired by their stories and wanted to share that medium in the same way that I usually consume stuff, which is podcasts. So my first 8 episodes are already up.
That's fantastic. MBA Candidate. Sounds very, very cool. I took a listen to, I think it was with Jazz. Is her name? Jazz?
Yep.
Jazz,
yep,
yeah.
That's the first episode, yep.
Yeah, the first episode. So yeah, man, definitely excited for your journey as well. Both in your MBA world, a fellow podcaster, but also with your time at Darden. Why Darden? Why did you choose? Why did Darden become like, this is the place I need to be?
For sure. So Darden was really stood out to me for 2 main reasons. 1, the culture, and 2, the professors. In terms of the culture, I visited the school last fall. So we're coming up almost on a year ago at this time, before I even submitted my application. That was a common thing I did. I visited all 9 programs that I was applying to before I ever hit the submit button, which was a lot. I just wanted to make sure I got it right. And so when I came there, I happened to be sitting in on a class where it was the Darden Cup every 3 weeks, sort of like in Harry Potter, how they have the wizard games or whatever it's called. Every 3 weeks.
What is it?
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. The one where they're on the brooms and they go after that golden
snitch.
Yeah, the snitch. Okay, cool. Well, I'm gonna get yelled at by all the fans, all the Harry Potter fans.
Yeah, feel free to edit that part out.
No, it's fine.
We can go Google whatever the name of that is. But what they do is in Darden, unlike a lot of schools where you can opt out of some classes and say, you know what, I already know this stuff, so I'm not going to take this. I'm going to focus on something. It's the opposite at Darden. You have to take, for your first 3 quarters, so for your first 6 months or so of business school, you sit in the exact same chair with the exact same group of 60 people out of the 300. And so you're broken up into 5 classrooms. And each of those classrooms has a name and a mascot and a chant and a bunch of traditions that go along with it and colors. So every 3 weeks, the classes, the 6 sections compete in different games.
Okay.
And so you'll have like basketball competition or trivia, or when I was there, it was lawn games. And I happened to be wearing the color of the section I was sitting in on. It was just, they happened to all be wearing blue because they were section B. And so it was sack races outside and tug of war and three-legged races, and there was beer and burgers outside. So I had a blast, and they actually involved me in those games. I got to be in their picture, and that section actually happened to win the event that day.
Nice.
So I had a really great experience. When you think about smaller class sizes for business schools, I've found that the smaller, the more tight-knit they are.
Yeah. I agree, man. I agree.
Yeah, and so that was the first big reason is the people were amazing. The second reason is I went to a small private liberal arts college for undergrad, and there was a big emphasis there on really actually focusing on the learning side of things as opposed to just, everyone's going to build a network at any MBA program, and everyone's going to, for the most part, most people are going to get a great job.
Yeah.
So I wanted to go to a place where I was also going to learn a lot and not just get 3 letters after my name, but really push myself academically.
Nice. So you wanted you wanted the challenges. What was the hardest part of this entire application process for you? Like, I mean, because you're not, let's say, okay, I think you're the very first American born, American raised MBA student on my my podcast. I mean, like, everybody is really international, so they have to take the GMAT, they have to take the TOEFL, they have all these proficiency tests. So that's usually the difficulty. It's either financial or it's proficiency test. What about you? What do the Americans really have the challenge? Because I mean, it's like we're looking at the other side of the fence. What were your main challenges, man?
Yeah, so I've listened to a lot of your episodes, and I've noticed that a lot of people do struggle with the GMAT. That was a big problem for me as well. I took it twice, and I never cracked a 700 mark. I studied for 150 hours and did more than 3,000 practice problems. So I really kept good track of all of that. Thought I was better at English than I actually am. So that was certainly a challenge for me. But what I realized coming out of that was, you know what? I don't want to take this thing a third time. I had already kind of taken my time delaying my applications and writing those essays to get through it. So I spent a lot of my time really getting to know the programs and doing the introspection. So you might be able to tell I'm pretty extroverted. The hardest thing for me was sitting down and really thinking about what are my goals, not just what are the standard tracks that people go and do, but what do I want to do with my summer internship? What do I want to do right after school? And where do I see myself in the long term? Like I said, my first job had gotten eliminated. Then I did a bunch of networking, but I kept kind of just finding jobs that were, I was fortunate to get that happened to be open. It wasn't as intentional as I feel like the MBA process allows you to be. So for me, the GMAT was a big hurdle. But it really came down to deciding, am I going to stick to what I want to do with my life in these essays, or am I just going to pick one of the standard tracks?
Right. Yeah. So okay. A couple of things here. So the self-awareness is key to your essays. I mean, that's like the number one. A lot of students tell me like, no, they're so worried about the GMAT. I'm like, that's not even the most important part of your application. It's really getting to know yourself and how you portray or express your past, present, and future through those essays in those limited 350, 400 words. It's crazy. It really forces you to really think about yourself. What's next for you then? Because you said, you really wanted to show where you're going with this. What comes after your MBA?
Yeah, so I like to think of it in terms of where do I see myself in the long term and then kind of work back to that. Okay. So what I realized that I love doing more than anything, this is why I wanted to come on your show and why I started my show, is I love helping build other people up. Yes. And the way that I've felt that the most is by working in the world of human resources and diversity and inclusion. Okay. So my ultimate goal, if I'm going to make it to, a chief whatever role, I don't want to be a chief financial officer or a chief investments officer, a chief operating officer. Maybe those might be a role I'll have at some point. But the ultimate goal for me is to be a chief human resources officer and focus on the people of an organization. So many companies say that their most valuable asset is their people, but for me, like I really want to be at a place where they truly believe that and be a catalyst for that to really happen there.
Yeah.
So in terms of what I plan on doing with the MBA in the near term, I've talked to several people who have that role as part of my application process to really understand what it's like and how they got to that place. And what they said to me was most of them didn't come up just through a standard HR leadership development track. Most of them got business credibility first. So the MBA really helped them a ton. And they joined an organization where they were in a function that was the most valuable. So for example, if they went and wanted to become the head of HR at Procter & Gamble, they would go there and work their way up through the brand management track, so the marketing track there, because that's kind of the central function. They make all the tough decisions there. They kind of own the P&L. So for me, it's going to come down to figuring out in the next 4 or 5 months while business school starts, what do I want to do? Do I want to do consulting? Do I want to do marketing? Do I want to do finance? Do I want to go into a tech company? Honestly, I'm not totally sure yet. I just know that I want to be at a place where I'm going to be surrounded by amazing people and I'm going to be pushed to learn about something within that company that they really value.
That's very true. So like, I think there are a lot of companies, I wanted to touch base on that. A lot of companies do say that their people are the most important thing, but a lot of times these companies, their actions are not aligned with sometimes with their missions or their visions and their beliefs. So that's kind of cool that you really want that. Like, let me just draw you a picture. For me, this whole helping my neighbor or helping my student or helping, just even a stranger, I imagine myself, 40, 50 years from now, this old 80-year-old guy, like just lonely, I've lost everything in life. I'm walking on the streets, raining. No, just sometimes I just imagine, I'm walking on the streets in this dark raincoat, it's nighttime, and I'm walking by one of those old TV appliance stores, and I see somebody that I taught or that I coached or who had some sort of impact, and he's on TV and he's one of the most important, or she's one of the most important women in the world. And I just kind of give off that, nice. I was part of her. I was part of her growth. For me, that's like really like,
Totally.
It really kind of gets me going. So
yeah.
But
same here.
Yeah, so I totally get where you're coming from, and then also where you plan on going. I think it's kind of cool that something that a lot of people you can't really plan too much for the future. As much as what you kind of want to do, and I think you're going at it the right way. And the reason why you're at Darden because of the people is also correct. Is that almost all the top MBAs, academically speaking, are very similar. They have like different methods, different ways to teach the same thing. What makes one of these top 20s very unique is going to be always the experience that you have at the school and the people that you meet. I mean, those friends that you're going to make in the next 2 years at Darden are going to be crazy. I mean, these are the people who are going to be one day, head of Apple. Another person might be at Amazon. Another person might be at Johnson & Johnson, or another person might start up his own, her own startup or political party. You never know. So being part of that process of making these lifelong friends is going to be amazing, man.
Yeah. I like to think about business school as you kind of have in any given day or any given week, you have 4 things you can really choose to prioritize amongst, but you can't do all of them, at least not in a given day. You can focus on your health, whether it's your physical or your mental health. You can focus on class and learning a lot. You can focus on recruiting and trying to get a job, or you can really focus on the social aspect of, going to club events or going and having a drink or coffee with somebody. And for me, that last one is the most important by far. The reason I was so excited about getting an MBA is when I was meeting people who were there, they had the same kind of drive and the same kind of passion about life that I did. So surrounding myself with those groups of people, I think in the long term will be what makes me successful. It's not going to be just that first job right out of business school that's going to determine my fate forever.
Oh, yeah.
So for me, like I'm always going to try to think, how can I make the experience of my classmates better? how can I make it so that people who are also coming into this school next year, that they have a positive experience? Because they're the ones who are going to hire me someday. They're the ones who are going to help me get a job, and vice versa. Like, I love helping other people find what they're excited about and just unleash them.
Nice. Oh yeah, man, definitely. I mean, it's just total human development, and like the fact that I think it's kind of cool, especially where you're at right now, as far as the school, and you're kind of getting to know the people. I know you're early in the process, but I kind of wanted to know what do you feel are like the two key traits like that say this is Darden. These are Darden people, because I mean, I usually when I sit down and I'm talking to somebody, whether it's a student who hasn't done his MBA, I can tell this person fits well with this school. Or if I'm talking to an alumnus or an alumni, and I get that, I start talking to him or her, and then I get this feeling like, all right, I think I know which school they went to, basically off of these, 2 or 3 traits. What are those key traits to you for like Darden?
Yeah. So off the top of my head, like I said, classes don't start till next Monday, but I've met a lot of my classmates in some of these events over the summer already. And I've obviously traveled to the school before and talked to some alums. The 2 things that stand out to me are going to be, one, stamina, just like being able to stay focused and get a lot done in any given day. Over the last week, we've had a finance and accounting boot camp, and it goes from 8 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock at night. And being able to stay on task during that whole thing, it takes a lot. It takes a lot of energy. And to keep this amount of energy I have right now, it certainly is tough. But you look around, you're like, wow, everyone is still so engaged. The second thing I've noticed is the willingness to put other people ahead of yourself, because everyone realizes that that's how you get through this. It's almost like when you see those movies where people are in like basic training for the military, they realize that the team is more valuable than just the individual. So I've heard stories about when you're in the recruiting process. Obviously, I haven't really started that yet, but when a company will come and have back-to-back interviews all day with 10 different candidates, let's say at Darden, people will say, oh man, like, make sure you think about this kind of thing before you go in there, as opposed to being closed off and saying, oh man, I'm not going to help anybody else with their interview prep. Or when it's late at night, helping people case interview or helping people with their behavioral interviews, sharing contact information. When you say, oh man, I met somebody who worked at Microsoft, you should also give them a call, as opposed to hoarding that information just to yourself.
No, that's true. That's definitely true. I mean, especially with collaboration. I've heard from other Darden students. A girl that I dated a long time ago. Oh my goodness. A girl that I dated a long time ago. Her younger brother actually graduated from Darden about 4 years ago. I think he did his MBA there. And one of the things that he told me was kind of crazy. It was kind of cool. Was that him and his classmates were sitting in the same office, waiting for like the same interviews for a position. And as soon as one of their other classmates came out, I mean, there were other candidates too. They actually huddled up, and then he would the first person in, the first person out would debrief like the entire interview to all the other Darden classmates. Like, look, okay, he had, the interviewer asked this, and this, and this. He didn't seem to like this answer, but we'll see. And then, they kind of prep together, like, all right, cool. And they're all there for the same position. I was like, that's kind of cool, because that's not something you would expect from candidates who are competing for, a couple of spots.
Yeah, I haven't heard examples where people have shared like specific questions, but definitely that spirit of, I want to make sure that, we're all going to get jobs. So let's make sure that we help everyone here be as prepared as possible. So if I went first, give you a tip about, hey, think about that time that you told me about this, because they might ask something about it. That makes sense that kind of thing would happen. I'm not sure if that's how allowed that is, or maybe the companies just get upset by it. But depending on what that looks like, that's exactly the kind of thing I'm talking about, where I'm personally willing to give up a lot of prestige myself, or a lot of leave a lot of money on the table to make it so that other people, when they think back to, okay, who was Adam at Darden, that he was the kind of person that helped pay it forward to people without asking anything else in return.
Nice. But here's the thing, though. Let me ask you this question. So this is now we're going to get introspective here. My question is this. You're very willing to leave a lot of things on the table. What happens if somebody takes that or takes advantage of that, or doesn't. I mean, you don't always have altruistic people everywhere in the world around you. You're always gonna have that one or two bad apples who are gonna either take advantage of you, or when one day you do ask for something, they don't return any favors. Just out of spite. I don't know. How do you take those moments?
Yeah, I would say if this is the person that I already know, I think that it comes down to having a conversation. So I can give you an example where actually this happened to me recently. During this finance and accounting boot camp, I actually ended up prioritizing exercising and having a phone call with a prospective student last week on Tuesday. Mm-hmm. And so I was underprepared going into basically my study group, what we call a learning team at Darden, that night, to having read the homework for the following day, read the cases. And so that person said, hey, we really had to help you, Adam, be prepared for the class tomorrow. Make sure that you can pay it forward to us next time. And I said, you know what? That was right. You're totally right. I should have been spending more time today helping you guys because this is a more immediate need than those other two things. I could have worked out later. I should have gotten up earlier. That other person, I could have talked to him on Saturday or Sunday. So I think the way I would approach it is similar to that. If I think someone is, especially not necessarily for me, but if I think they're taking advantage of the group and they're putting themselves first, approaching them and saying very candidly, I noticed this behavior. What are your priorities? Where is it coming from? Sometimes it makes sense. Sometimes people have to say, you know what, I really, really want this thing and I'm willing to do whatever it takes. So asking questions as opposed to accusing them of something. Mm-hmm. And then once you get to the bottom of that, thinking about how can I, if I think it makes sense to, how can I provide some suggestions to that individual?
Nice. Yeah, bring it down to conversation. I mean, yeah. Because human interaction is so tough, man. I mean, it's even within groups and things like that. It's really, really hard, even with like-minded people. What's the international body like there at Darden? Do you know? I mean, like how diverse is it for internationals?
Yeah, so today and tomorrow is actually like the orientation for international students. And I think the last time I looked at the statistics on the website, I think it's around 30 to 35%. Mm-hmm. It was probably across all the top 20 schools around the average is how I would say it.
Nice. Okay, so have you been abroad? Like, have you visited some of these international countries before? Like,
very, very little. I'm super excited about doing that. My financial aid package just came in through my email today. So that's one of the things I'm definitely going to prioritize is doing some of those trips abroad. And Darden actually just got some additional funding for in the spring after those first 3 quarters to make it so that the school will pay for us to go to one other country for 2 or 3 weeks. In terms of the experience I've already had overseas, I've gone a little bit to Central America. And I studied abroad in college in England. I studied at the University of Cambridge there. I studied economics for a semester. And while I was there, I would say every other weekend, we would try to go to a different country. So I've been to Belgium, I've been to Denmark, Germany, the Netherlands, all of the UK. And so I haven't been to all the places that I'm super excited about going to. I just signed up for some of the clubs in school, and I'm super excited to sign up for like the Asian club, the South Asia club, the Latino club, the European club. Like I really want to be. What I've noticed in terms of like the dynamics when I visited, that a lot of international students, because of a language barrier, because of just a cultural barrier, they're not always able to make as many friends with American students and vice versa. So just like how I was saying before, working in diversity and inclusion, I definitely want to be one of those people that can bridge the gap and can help folks who want to learn more about America, or for me, I want to learn about other countries because I'd love to live overseas in terms of working later on. Just what it's like, okay, how do you say this? And what are some of the traditions you have? And how can I help celebrate that with you?
That's nice. That's actually kind of interesting. I like the way you approached it, mainly because usually when the international students make friends, it's when they get into these when they get into like these clubs, like Entrepreneur Club, Family Business Club, Women in Business Club, things like that. When they get into those clubs, they make these friends. But very rarely do you see like an American jumping into an Asia Pacific club, South Asia
Yep.
club. I mean, they're gonna be the ones looking at you like, what's this guy doing?
Yeah, no, I'm totally going to do it. And same thing with the women's club. So I helped a guy out of Berkeley for a couple months last year. He was starting a Man Ambassadors group at Berkeley Haas. And so just as a fun project for myself to do on the side when I wasn't doing the applications, I was helping him build out some of his materials so that there wasn't just a women's group that only involved females. There was also a way for guys to feel like they could help in whatever ways that women's group felt necessary. So I'm definitely going to join the Women in Business Club at Darden as well.
That's nice. I like it. I like women in business. Sometimes when I'm talking to like some more of the conservative type people, and I tell them like, look, oh, there's this women in business club that some people in the women in business club that I know, and they're like, yeah, no, that's all about feminism. I'm like, not really. This is nothing to do with that. These are women who have an agenda, not an agenda. They have an objective, very different. You have people who have an agenda, but then you have people there who have an objective. They're going there to become CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. They don't have time to worry about being objectified. I don't know, man. It's kind of crazy, and I really feel like women in business clubs all across the U.S. For example, I think I'm kind of hoping to one day meet somebody who's going to be like the ambassador and like start speaking out either on YouTube or on in a podcast forum to talk about the experiences that they go through, because some of the things they go through are very intense, like some leadership workshops that are just crazy. I mean,
Absolutely.
Some activities that I think schools should even think about applying into their normal curriculum, because, like in Europe, HSC has this program, but I know that there's also a women in business club in Europe that also does this sort of a military training form of a leadership workshop over the weekend. It's like these girls, they go just do a survival camp. They take what they have on the backpack.
Wow.
And it's a group of like 20 women, 20 women who like just go out into the middle of nowhere and then just stay there for like, try to get out of the jungle, so to speak, for like after 4 or 5 days. Obviously, there's always somebody a little bit further away monitoring them, but without them knowing, exactly where the location is. And they have to figure it out. It's just like they have to figure out how to survive and stuff. It's kind of crazy. I mean, I really think that they're doing a great job with that. Let me make a big left turn here into
Sure.
a totally different territory and ask you. I want to talk to you about your podcast. What were some of the difficulties that you found while doing your podcast? I mean, because it's cool, man. Like when I started the podcast, I faced difficulties, but it was a lot easier for me to like get interviewees, mainly because they're either students or friends of students or even recommenders who had who had already graduated. They were always happy to help out and do some interviews. But for you, how's that journey been?
People?
Yeah, well, not just found people. How's the journey for your podcast? How's it been so far?
Totally. So the journey started about 6 months ago. I worked at that big insurance company for 5 years, and most people quit their jobs, I would say, in the summer months before business school starts. Most programs begin in August, not September, as some people might think. And so I actually got a lot of advice from current students and from alumni, where I'd asked them, some of those same people who I'd talked to during the application process, and I said, what do you wish you would have done differently when you found out that you got into your dream school? And they all said, I wish that I would have taken some time off to relax, because now I'm super busy. I'm not getting as much sleep as I want. I'm doing all these different fun things, but it's just go, go, go. So I wish I would have taken some time off. And so I left my corporate job last day in March, took all of April off, took all of May off. And in June, I went to a conference called the Consortium, which is short for the Consortium for Graduate Studies in Management, where it's for people who are committed to diversity and inclusion amongst people that are African American, Hispanic, or Native American, So it has to be, you have to have helped in some way one of those three underrepresented minorities.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a special process that you can do to apply for a cheaper amount of money on the application fee. So you can apply to 6 schools for the price of one. And then there's also this event in first week of June where you get the opportunity to already meet some people from other business schools. So I met folks who were also headed to Berkeley or headed to Yale or Dartmouth or Michigan or some of my classmates at Darden. And there's a total of 20 schools that are a part of that. So when I met those folks, we all started a group me and a WhatsApp. And so we were chatting all the time back and forth. And I had met so many people during that 5-day conference where they had amazing backgrounds, and just thought to myself, holy cow, like I need to figure out a way to share their stories with my friends and my family and people who are also going to be applying to school, whether they're coming into school right now or they're current applicants. So I didn't want to start a podcast. Like I knew it was going to be really time consuming, but it just seemed like the best possible medium that I could think of. So I still had some time off in the summer. So I just Googled, how do you start a podcast? Figured out some of the software, bought these headphones and this microphone and pop filter, downloaded a couple things, but it's not super expensive to get it off the ground. The two things that have been difficult have been, one, figuring out how to get great sound quality out of my guests. So hopefully I sound good because, I've got a professional mic here. And second, the biggest thing is my time. So I spend an average right now of 3 to 5 hours editing each episode. And I've got to figure out a faster way to do that once classes start. So I've still had some time off right now to, try to make it perfect. But I enjoy that process actually, because it's kind of like piecing together a puzzle, but it's not going to be sustainable for the long term. No. So finding people has been surprisingly easy for me. It's really been finding this great sound quality and the time to edit.
Nice. How many? Do you have any like adcoms coming up? Like, are you trying to reach out to adcoms, try to get them to interview and stuff?
So the way I'm kind of structuring it is I'm doing a season 1 right now just to see how that goes, where I want to get at least one person from each of the top 15, if not 20 or 25 business schools in the US.
Nice.
So no, there won't be any like consultants or adcom or alumni. It'll only be people who are coming into business school in the same year as me right now, folks that I've met during that. And so once I have each of those, let's say I do 15 episodes for the top 15 schools, then I'm going to think about what does season 2 look like. Then I might do some episodes where it is alumni, or have those same people back on to figure out where they had their internship next year, or talk to some consultants, whether it be GMAT related, TOEFL related, essays related, and really mix it up from there. But right now I'm just trying to keep it as simple as possible, because it's very easy for me to have a conversation with other people coming in, whether they're going to Wharton or Harvard or Stanford. I kind of know how to ask those same questions, because I'm getting those questions all the time about, why did you go to that school and what are you looking forward to?
Yeah, you're living your experience, man. So it's going to come naturally for you right now.
Yeah, and I'm using those answers they're giving me to figure out what it is that I want to recruit for, because who at age 12 wants to be an investment banker? Who knows what a brand manager is at age 12 or what a consultant is at age 12? So when did I try to get to what are these people's childhoods like? When did it become clear to them that they wanted to go into the world of business, and why the specific focus area that they're saying they want to go into?
Oh, that's interesting. That's crazy. So you ask about their childhood.
Yeah. I try to dig deep into like, what were your parents like? What kind of sports did you play? What were your friends like? To figure out like, how did you get to this point when you're 25 or 30? I found that gives a lot of good insight into folks.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Just hold on. Excuse me. It's cold weather. It's rainy, and I'm coming out of a cold. I'm very interested now that you said that. Like, talk to me about your childhood, because that's not a question that's normally asked, either in a podcast, rarely asked in an MBA interview, and almost never asked in a professional interview. I've been a consultant now. I started my career at my work 18 years ago as a teacher. 14 years ago, I started my work. I designed my very first website. And then I started working in, digital marketing, digital media consulting, while I built my own things. So I've built my own website. I've built my own e-commerce, my own email marketing system, my own podcast, my own iOS app that got kicked out because it sucks so bad, but I did it. So I did that part, and it's been about 12 years since I started professional consulting, which is more like helping people get into their dream jobs or careers, or just directing them to the right way.
Sure.
And then it's been only about 7 years now that MBA admissions consulting fell into my lap. So my entire life has been revolved around consulting. And then what I've noticed is, even in professional interviews, they don't ask about the childhood. And that's something that I think that really, really shows so much insight into a person, not just what they talk about, their childhood, but how they describe certain events, how they talk about specific things or people in their lives. That really brings a lot about their personality. People don't realize it.
Yeah.
I'm saying all this to say that I feel like the interview process for the MBA admissions is actually kind of broken. There's better ways to do it, better ways to select candidates, because I've seen great candidates not make it into a school that I felt like, man, this guy, or this girl is perfect for the school, and the schools didn't accept them, and vice versa. I've seen some terrible candidates. I'm like, man, I'm doing like interview coaching, and in the middle of the coaching, I'm like, this person sucks. And they actually get in, and I'm like, what? How does that happen? There has to be some sort of metrics. Anyway, I just say that.
Yeah.
I just wanted to include that because it's kind of interesting. I really wish the childhood question actually started, would be asked more often. Very much in a human resources point of perspective, both in businesses and at business schools. People should go be like, how was your childhood? What happened in your childhood? And you get so much insight.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, what you do is you also kind of lower people's guard, because so many times when you're talking to people about their business school dreams, they go right to this elevator pitch around, worked here for a couple of years, applied to these schools, I'm from this location, and I want to go into XYZ. But you're like, no, there's so much more to that. Like, you probably didn't plan this out that way. Mm-hmm. And when you start talking about people when they were 15 years old or 10 years old, you get all these kind of goofy, funny things out, and you're like, oh, that's why it makes sense that you wanted to make a lot of money. Yeah. That's why you love building and creating new things. And so starting there has been a great way to just jump right into starting each of my episodes, and also sheds light onto why they want to have these goals in the first place.
Nice. Yeah, definitely. I'll keep up with that, because I think that's just such a golden question, man. Such a golden question. I mean, it's so... People don't realize that, like, if you know how to analyze the answers, you can make the connections. And then, something that happened in childhood, you're like, oh, that's why this person is so fixated on, on wanting to do this. It's to kind of prove to her, to her mother that she can, or something. It really depends on each person. But
totally. Yeah, so I can give you an example or two. So my episode that's coming out next week is with a guy who's going to Harvard, to HBS, and had I not asked him about that, I wouldn't know why it is that he's so excited about going into healthcare through business school. He's worked in finance for the last couple of years, and it's because when he was 18, he had a massive stroke and lost the use of the right half of his body for 6 months before he could slowly, through rehabilitation, get back onto his feet. So he was the president of a large nonprofit in his free time over the last couple of years. Not the president, he was the president of the board of directors. And so starting with that childhood of like, what were you like as a teenager? What were you like as a little kid? That's where it came from. Like, oh, that's why he wants to go work at a place like Genentech or Medtronic or United Health Group. Like, that's why he's making this pivot. It's not just about switching careers and everyone that he works with is telling him he should just go get an MBA.
Yeah, or that's not even about like a salary bump. It's not that. There's something deeper, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
It's like Jordan leaving the Bulls to go play baseball to fulfill his one of his childhood dreams, or
Yeah, when his father passed away. So that reminds me of another episode that I put out last week with a guy named Gary who's going to Tuck, and he's Native American. So he grew up in in an Indian town in the middle of nowhere in the United States and lost both of his parents.
Oh, no.
So he suffered a lot of depression and didn't end up graduating from college until he was 28. So beyond the year that, beyond the average age of a current person going into business school is when he finished college. And from there, he took a job in a call center at a big insurance company and worked his way back to working for his tribe, and now is the CEO managing all of the investments for all of the Creek Indians there. Wow. So his goal now is to go and get a job on Wall Street. And you'd be like, wow, why does this guy want to go into finance? Like, if you hadn't started from a little kid who gets uprooted at 10 years old and is forced to move back to Oklahoma from being in a really vibrant community in California and having culture shock and not having any TV or video games or any place to go shopping on the weekend, just being really poor, like they didn't have any money. They had to choose between food and utilities a lot of the time. You understand, okay, this is why this person wants to go work at Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan. It's because he wants to get that knowledge and then come back to his tribe 15 years later. Because right now he's 36 going into Tuck, right? That's way beyond the average age of most people going to business school.
Yeah, that would be like a Sloan Fellows age, to get into like MIT or Stanford Sloan.
Yeah. Or executive programs in general.
Yeah.
So
not an MBA.
Exactly. So his story makes so much sense if you start from, okay, walk me through from the beginning. Where did you come from? And where do you see yourself for him? Like, where do you see yourself at 50, 55? It's going back and helping them manage that money even better.
Yeah, I think podcasters are sort of like psychologists in a way.
Yeah. Once you hit record, you get a whole different side of people than you normally would.
Yeah. It's amazing how many people really want to share their story. You become kind of a megaphone for people to tell their stories. It's kind of crazy how open people are to that. You would think people are like, no, I'm worried about my privacy or whatever. But then once they start going, it's like, all right, keep this off record, okay? And they start telling you things that, it's like, I'm not even supposed to be hearing this. This is crazy. But it brings in so much insight to the person. But anyway, I mean, I have some plans for the next 5-6 years. I know it's going to be a long time because basically I've built everything on my own. But this is something I want to build a platform that basically kind of works like a podcast, but that connects candidates with alumni or current students.
Yeah.
Where they can just kind of talk to each other for, like it would be where the candidate can talk to 10 alumni from either different schools or all from the same schools. Doesn't matter, that they choose. They sit down, they talk for about an hour or so. Yeah. But all of that is, the alumni would actually end up doing an evaluation, an analysis, and he would input that into the system. The platform, the algorithm would actually kind of do like a psych evaluation from the answers that the person gave, and that schools can actually use that as the part of the interview process. Because here's the thing.
Wow.
What I realize is you can BS your way into any school if you understand what the school is looking for in a 45-minute interview, even with, Christine Laka at Tuck she's crazy good. She can see through BS. But a lot of the other schools, I mean, you can figure out a way to just kind of like 45 minutes, you can put on a facade and you can get through. But that's not good for the school or for the candidate because when you're dating a girl for 2 years that you have no business dating. It's just like, this is not the business. I like baseball. She hates baseball. It doesn't make sense for you to do that just to get the brand name. But you can't BS your way through 5 to 10 hours of conversations with like-minded people of that school. There's no way,
Totally.
So I mean, I'm kind of hoping. I'm still developing this idea. I have some things in mind, but I really want to be able to do that. It's not really. And then it goes back to that. It's not really about making money off of it. Of course, money is important for our bills and things like that. But for me at least, it's all about being fair, which kind of goes back to my childhood. A lot of things that happened to me, I didn't think they were fair. It's just like, you don't get picked mainly because, you're not tall, dark, and handsome, or you didn't get picked. I got kicked off of, I really love basketball. All 4 or 5 times I tried out for like little league and stuff, I never got picked, man. I mean, even if I was better than some of the players, I never got picked. I don't know.
Wow.
Might have been a racial thing. I don't know. But it's still, for me, it's like that. It is not fair. I don't get why the whole picking process is so messed up. Why is it so subjective? Not, you know. And so I guess that's kind of it's kind of interesting when you're talking about the links between the childhood and the things that we want to do. One of my next 5-year goals is to find a way to kind of like level the playing field so that the people who get picked are the ones that have, meritocracy, man, pure meritocracy. It's the ones that deserve to go to a great school, not the one who can kind of figure out a way to get in,
Well, if you need any help with that, like I wrote a Poets and Quants article recently that got a lot of traction explaining kind of my story and how I got into some of these schools without, killing the GMAT or having the perfect work experience. So I've had a couple of people reach out to me. I think it's up to 12 now within the last 2 weeks who are applying to business school this year. Nice. So if you need me to test any of this out, like I would love to talk to any of your listeners. Feel free to give my contact information. Awesome. Or you can just find me on LinkedIn if you just type in Adam Miller, UVA Darden MBA candidate. Like you'll find me. I'm happy I respond to everybody. Yeah. And I'm happy to chat with them.
No, awesome. Thank you, man, so much. That's awesome. Like anytime, and that's the whole point. I mean, obviously, if I can figure out a way to like build a nice little business model where the alumni does get an incentive to make, some money off of this 1-hour consult. Like I'm a consultant, but I think a better consultant than me would be somebody who's actually at the school.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
And then for all those people, like I've thought about like, okay, should I monetize this or should I give it away for free? Like for me, it's a different payout because what I care about the most is that gratitude of just seeing somebody get into Darden and watch their process. I had a young lady who's from India recently email me back and forth or message me back and forth on LinkedIn. And she just in that, like basically the day after I wrote that article 3 weeks ago, to last weekend when she retook the GMAT, I was just giving her words of encouragement and explaining to her, like, you got this. Like she went from like, I think a 640 to a 710. Now that's a gigantic jump. So for me, I just ask for people to stay in touch so I can get that little gem of like, oh man, you got into your dream school, whether it's Darden or not. I love following other people's journeys and also wanting to I've loved staying in touch with the people who I have contacted at various schools, even if they're not Darden alumni.
Yeah, no, definitely, man. Yeah. And man, so many things that are going to come up for you, I think, especially, I mean, because I'm looking at you and I'm remembering my first year doing the podcast and all the things that I'm doing. Like just people out of the blue start talking to you and you're helping these people. You're not really expecting anything in return. You're just helping them to help them out. But then strangely, cool things start to happen. And then, at one point you're just going to be like, well, what's the, it's like, I don't know, you can say the universe is conspiring in your favor, or if it's karma, or if it's God, I don't know, whatever it is that you believe in, but you're like, yeah, this is awesome. I'm on the right track. So, in that way, I think you're doing a great job with your podcast and that you've gotten into it. If one day I'm like, all right, I'm stepping away from the NBA podcast mantle, I'm going to head over to the NBA candidate. Listen up, guys. Look, this is the guy that who needs to be doing it.
No, because I'm looking forward to that day. I'd be happy to.
That would be awesome, man. That would be awesome.
Yeah,
it's like I'm at the point where because I'm doing 3 different consulting services, so professional, educational, MBA admissions, and marketing, digital marketing. It's like right now at the moment I'm dating 3 girls and I have to get married to one of them, dude. It's like because I'm at the point where if I keep doing all 3, I'm gonna start losing quality of service in one of them.
Yep.
So yeah, man, that's one of my biggest decisions right now is like how to, because I love doing what I'm doing. Like I love
Yep.
doing the podcast. I love helping students get into their MBAs because it gives me so much access, dude. Like a lot of the students,
Yep.
you know, that I teach, and they're from these huge companies. They give me insights into what these companies are doing that helps me with
Ah,
the professional consulting and the digital marketing consulting, you know. I got a
totally. That
student
makes a lot
who,
of sense.
I mean, yeah, because that's like that's what's been feeding my information. Like I don't go online to do research, but I know what Coca-Cola is doing here in Brazil. You know, I know everything that they're doing here because I have students from Coca-Cola, for example, or Banco Itaú, or you know, it just, or you know, from a small fintech or a startup. Like I know who's gonna be the next unicorn, but I can't invest because I have that information in my head. You know, it's I can't invest in that company. But one of my students works at that company. He's like, yeah, we're setting up an IPO and we're trying to launch this year. So I'm like, you could have told my sister and just said Matt. I was like,
That's
I can't do it.
hilarious.
Yeah, it's unethical. I can't do it now. You know, I mean, I know it. I can't tell anybody, but I also can't invest. So,
Yeah.
but you know,
So it
it's
sounds like what you're saying is, because this is the thing I'm going to struggle with, I think, when classes start next week, is figuring out how to manage your time, both from what are my priorities down to in a given day, what am I going to do at 1 o'clock? What am I going to do at 4 o'clock? Like, how am I going to decide what to say no to? I think one of the things I learned about myself going up to this point is that I got the success that I did in the corporate world and in my personal life because I said yes to everything, right? I always said, you know what? I'm not dating anybody. I do have a girlfriend now, but like I'm not, like I always could take more on, right? I
right.
could work on the weekends. I could stay later in the office. I could take that extra project on. But now that I'm entering a school where it's, the time like I explained, it's going to go from 8 o'clock to 8 o'clock every single day. My time is going to be very valuable. And I'm not going to enter a career probably where it's going to be any different, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to be in a place where they're going to expect me to be in early and stay late, and sometimes even on the weekends. So I'd love to hear how you're thinking about just in general. And I guess now I'm interviewing you a little
I know
bit.
it's like nothing.
How do you think about time management in general? Because I haven't figured it out. That's the thing I'm most worried about is just today, this morning, I started writing up a list of all the people in my life, whether it's family and friends or previous coworkers that I want to stay in touch with and how often I want to do that because I'm so worried that I'm never going to see them. Like might not move back to Minnesota or Wisconsin. And it may be many years before I have a reason to stay in touch with a lot of those folks. So I have to be very intentional about, I've got to schedule in a phone call with my best friend Tom today to give him a call and just ask him about life because I'm not going to see him at the parties this weekend.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so a couple of things. First of all, time management for me, like something crazy is gonna happen. When I was dating my wife, I had a lot of time. I didn't realize how much time I had until I had my first son. And then I got crazy. But then after I had my second son, I didn't realize I had so much more free time when I didn't have my second son. So it's kind of like a process. Yeah, I mean, like now with two kids, I'm working. I sleep about 2.5 to 3 hours a day. That's it.
What? That's
It, man.
crazy.
Yeah, that's crazy. I went to a couple of doctors this week, and so one of them actually suggested you need. Did you know that if you sleep around right after lunch, well, at least
Huh?
we did like a metabolism, like we did a checkup on my metabolism cycle, and my
Huh?
doctor, she was like, you know that it's not good. It's not as good for you to sleep at night than it is for you, Mateo, to sleep right after lunch. Your cycle is 100% optimized right after lunch. You have to, if you sleep for 2 hours, you get 8 hours of REM sleep in those 2 hours.
Wow.
The equivalent of 8 hours of REM sleep in those 2 hours. From 1 p.m. to 3 p.m., you should be sleeping.
So I woke you up for this podcast, basically,
Yeah,
because we
yeah, well,
started
yeah. Wow.
at 3.
No, actually, yeah, I had some stuff that I had to deliver, but she was like, but literally, you can sleep for those 2 hours and not sleep for the rest of the day or night, and that would
Whoa.
be your schedule. Your brain function will be at 100%. It'll be fine. And I'm like,
Wow.
what? That's crazy. So starting next week, I want to try that because, I mean, I'm one of those people. I don't want to sleep because there's so many things I
You're
want
so
to do.
busy.
I'm so
Yeah,
busy,
totally.
but I
Yep.
enjoy what I'm doing. So it's not like, oh my God, I have to stay up. It's really like, I can't believe I have to go to sleep now, man, because this is crazy. I want to finish
Yep.
this, you know? As
Yep.
far as
I'm
time
exactly the same
management,
way. I'm exactly the same way. So
yeah.
if I wake up early at 6, I'm tired, in the afternoon. But then when it comes to 10 p.m., I keep my girlfriend up because I'm like, oh, what do you want to talk about? Let's talk about what you're doing tomorrow. Here's what I'm doing tomorrow. This is how my day was. And next thing you know, it's 1 a.m. And I'm like, oh my God, like now I'm going to get 5 hours of sleep again, which I desperately need all 5 of those. Like I don't think I could make it on 2 or 3 every night. And luckily we don't have any kids yet in our lives. So I'm curious to see, like you got to follow up with me and let me know how that works for you, flipping that on its head next week.
Yeah, yeah, no, I'm gonna do that. It's also because she said that when I go to sleep at night, if I go to sleep like around 11 p.m., it'll take me. It's gonna take my system 2 hours to jump into REM sleep. So that's actually, if I go to bed at 11 and close my eyes and I'm sleeping, my body only starts REM at 1 a.m. And then that's when it's
Yep.
equivalent 1 hour to 1 hour ratio. Whereas
Yep.
after lunch, so I'm gonna try that out, but. To keep up with friends, something that I did a while ago, which kind of really worked for me before I had my second kid, was I had a list of like, all right, these are the 30 friends that I cannot live without. Like, I want to make sure that they're close. The top, let's just say my top 2 or 3 best friends, I'm like, all right, let's go. I took them out because my top 3 best friends are those best friends where if I don't talk to them for 4 years, but then we talk to each other again, it's like nothing, that time gap left.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because I mean, these guys are high school friends who, like, one of them, we spent like, it was like 5 years we hadn't talked to each other. All of a sudden, out of the blue, he calls me. He's like, look, I'm coming down, I'm coming to where you are. Let's sit down for, and it was just like, it felt like high school all over again, So I have those
Totally.
3 friends. All the other 30, the next 30 friends, though, what I do is I basically go, all right, every day I'm going to talk to one of them for 30 minutes, and I'm just going to do a cycle. At one point, I had I would do 3 calls a day so that it was a cycle. I was always talking to them every 10 days. It was always every 10 days that I talked to them either for 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes.
Amazing.
Yeah, so now today with 20, with 2 kids and stuff and with 3 businesses going on at the same time, now I'm just more like, all right, friends, sorry, I gotta work. We'll talk when we talk.
Yep.
Love you all, but I'll see you on Instagram and Facebook. But like I don't go out at night, man, because it's just like if I go out on a Friday night, I'm bad Saturday. I'm not productive Saturday night, so I lose actually 2 nights of work or extra time with my boys. So it's kind of like, all right,
Totally.
Priorities, man. Priorities.
Yeah.
But you'll figure it out, dude. You're gonna learn time management like crazy at Darden, dude. The MBA is perfect for time management. You have no idea because you're gonna be like, I can't do everything.
I'm really excited about it. It's gonna be I'm gonna learn a lot of self-discipline by going through it.
Yep.
And I like to think of MBAs as like a leadership boot camp where every day we've got like this task where we've got to prepare for the next round of classes, and our group of 5 of us has to come together and figure out who's going to work on the finance class and who's going to work on the accounting one, who's going to work on the touchy-feely class. Like you got to figure out how to divvy things up and then come back together, and it takes a lot of leadership both internally and externally.
Yep, totally, man. That's going to be a process, dude. Adam, I really, really, really would love to have you back on this podcast in about 6 months. Once you've started your Darden class experiences, because I want to know what goes on behind the scenes. People see like when you did your research, you went online, you're like, all right, okay, this is Darden, great. Mm-hmm. And then you start to kind of get to know because other people tell you, look, it's great, it's great, it's great. And then now we're going into the phase where you're actually going to experience it. I want to hear about how great it is from your perspective in about 6 months, if you're cool with that, man.
Absolutely. I would love to share that.
All right. Fantastic, man. We're going to have to finish up because we've gone way past our 1 hour threshold. I'm going to get a comment like, I thought this was an MBA thing and you guys are talking about podcasting and time management. Everything's interconnected, ladies and gentlemen.
Totally.
Everything is interconnected.
Sorry to all the listeners.
Yeah, no, don't worry about it, man. This is free information for them. But wanted to ask you, What would you be your like final piece of advice for anyone who's going through this journey at this moment? What is your piece of advice to them?
Yeah, I think the best piece of advice that I've gotten, that I've seen when I've passed it on to other people is why not? There was a mentor of mine named Matt Crowley who I worked with at that insurance company. And he and I a lot of times would stay late and work on an extra project or two that weren't part of our job descriptions because we were just so excited to get that extra thing done. And he was really a mentor of mine. He had gotten an MBA just before joining the organization, and I would say limiting things about myself all the time. It was the mental barriers where I would say, oh man, I could never get my MBA, or oh man, I can never figure out how to do this analysis, or oh, I could never date that girl, right? I tell him about my personal life. We were actually like good friends, and so
you were friends.
Wait.
You were good friends with your girlfriend.
I was good friends with my coworker, Matt.
Oh, okay.
And I would sometimes express to him when we were sitting there having a pizza late at night, getting back to work, and just tell him about some of the insecurities that I had. And he always would just say the words, why not you? Why can't you do that? And then he would stay really silent and let me talk through why I had that limiting belief. So what I would tell people out there is, if you're thinking like, I can never take that GMAT again, I got a 600 and I'm done. I know I have to do it, or I can't finish these essays in time, or I'll never get into Harvard or Stanford or Wharton or whatever school you're looking at, or I'll never be able to date that girl, or whatever the thing is that you don't think you can do. Ask yourself why you think you can't do it.
Yeah.
And you'll find that you talk yourself out of like, oh, it's because it comes from this, but how valid is that other reason? Sometimes, yeah, like if you say, oh, I could never fly if I jumped off a cliff, like, yeah, you probably can't do that thing. So like there's some things that physically you just couldn't make happen.
Right.
But if you want something bad enough throughout this application process, focus on that long-term goal. That's one of the best things about an MBA application process is you have a thing that you're striving to go get that's going to keep you motivated day to day, even if you don't love your job or your home life, or, how much sleep you're getting, or, you have any kind of insecurities about yourself. You have this long-term thing that you're staying fixated on. And whenever you see that doubt start to creep in, just ask yourself why you think you're not good enough for it, and talk through some of those reasons. You'll tend to find that they're not well-founded.
Very true, man. Very true. I tell people, it's something that I read somewhere or heard somewhere, and it's always stuck with me. It's like people who say that I can and people who say that I can't are both actually usually right. And that's exactly what you said, man. If you say you can't, you're right. You're gonna fall into that, a self-fulfilling prophecy. But I love the way you put it. Why not you? And then that forces you to think, okay, why not me? Let me think of all the defects, all the qualities, the strengths and weaknesses that wouldn't allow me to fulfill this. And then when you eliminate one by one, you're kind of like, well, that's such a dumb reason why I couldn't do it, And I think that's kind of cool, man. I really liked it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Adam, I really want to thank you so much for reaching out to me and really wanting to be part of this podcast. I'm very happy. I'm very happy for your podcast. I'm very excited. The MBA Candidate, ladies and gentlemen, go check it out on iTunes. Adam, man, it's been a pleasure. I will talk to you. We're gonna have another episode in 6 months. In 6 months to check up your experience at Darden if you have time.
I will make time. I promise you, this is a priority for me, Mateo. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for letting me come on, and look forward to staying in touch. Let me know how that flipping of your sleep schedule goes.
I will.
And like I said, to anyone else who's out there listening, please feel free to shoot me a note on LinkedIn, Adam Miller at Darden. Just type those words in, and happy to chat about anything related to business school applications in the U.S.
Wow. Very, very nice, man. Very honored. Citizens of the MBA Wire. That's it for our episode today. I hope you really enjoyed it. I hope you really do. Go and follow Adam Miller. This is Mateo Chang and Adam Miller signing off. Catch you guys next time.
Hello.